times I remember having spoken on, um, you know, um, on Najib's issue, um, and here, and I also remember having spoken a bit agitatedly on what happens to Dalits. Um, Now, today's political discourse in this country is charged with these two categories. Um, why? Because the use of one category, that is Dalit, is politically very beneficial for whichever party comes to power. And another political category, we can call it religious category, that is Muslim, which is fast emerging um, as a category which can be used as a tool to polarize political discourse in this country. Um, and this polarization is not a new thing. This polarization is repeated by carrying out killings, by keeping people under constant threat in the name of food, in the name of rabid nationalism. If you outly practice your religion, then you are not Indian enough. Now, this is a very staple political discourse that is prevalent in this country. This political discourse is also this had remained in when I say political discourse, meaning people in this society would talk about this, and that is what we call democracy. But this political discourse is rapidly finding political patronage, and that's a very dangerous thing in this country. You create events to give fillip or to renew this political discourse. The demolition, Babri Mosque was one of them. You carry out caste riots, caste killings, not riots, because they are always one-sided. When Dalits are killed, when they try to retaliate, there are more killings of Dalits. What happened in Una is the demonstration of, naked demonstration of how we practice caste in our everyday life. People would talk about the discourse of development, but then this Una episode showed us this ugly face of development, this hollow face of development. If I could take you back to what happened in BJP and the Shiv Sena's coalition government in Bombay, 12 Dalits were shot dead. Rohit Vemula's incident is very recent. We have numerous communal riots in this country. So the point that I am trying to make is that these political programs, I'm not saying program, I'm saying programs that state very actively participates in engineering, in carrying out communal cauldron, and that's a program. Those who are from, you guys are quite smart enough to understand the term. That state actively participates in massacring people from a certain section of society, what we call minorities. Now, what is more dangerous? What I recall that there is this state of exception that Giorgio Agamben, this um, Italian philosopher, political legal philosopher, talks about, that how the state actively participates in creating these states of exceptions. And in the context of Indian society, these states of exceptions acquire political significance because of the kind of politics that is happening around Dalits and minorities. Minorities are new entrants because Dalits are now being seen as a very powerful, politically important political category that can be roped in to give credence to the discourse of rapid nationalism. And to some extent, unfortunately, they have also fallen prey to this political discourse. What happened in Gujarat, we know that Dalits and Adivasis also participated. What happened in Orissa, Adivasi Christians were made to fight against, Hindu Adivasis against Christian Adivasis. So this state of exceptions that is being actively created or practiced by the Indian state, when I say Indian state, a particular kind of Indian state. Here would be Hindu right. The Indian state dominated by the Hindu right. Now this is a very dangerous thing. State of exceptions not only quarantines individuals or groups, but it also affects the active political discourse, meaningful political action. Let me put it this way. So this meaningful political action, which is being suspended, I only hope that it does not acquire the character of permanency. It doesn't become a permanent feature of the society. And the danger is that, it appears to me that we may have this character of Indian society. The kind of things that are happening, the manner in which presently group of students are being shielded despite being declared as, as those who participated in attacking Najib. Now we are sitting in Delhi and we are talking about this university. We are not talking about any regional university where, a group of students attacked a student somewhere in a very far corner of this country. We are talking about here and the manner in which, the dispensation of justice is being carried out. It's highly questionable. People who are derogating, denigrating members of minority and Dalits in this university are being shielded. No action has been taken against them. They are being called, Dalits and minorities are being called anti-national. I don't have to revisit this, but it becomes important to talk about this issue because the person who's is said to have said this continues to roam free, enjoys all these, the position of power, and also participates in, important meetings, and also goes on to defend herself. So what kind of message this administration is giving to those who belong to these categories or to larger communities that believe in, egalitarian political discourse? Or are they also being threatened that, if you say something, you are going to be the next target? And the manner in which the notices are being issued to students who participate and, raise very important issues with the administration are being now targeted. I mean, we have every reason to believe that this is becoming a permanent feature of this university. If you really want to do justice, if you really want to feel people confident in the manner in which you work, then I think you should address their issues. But unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case. That has not been the case. Let me put it this way. So this this society is as if um, malice or denigration or derogation of people is in its DNA. Um, the edifice of caste system tells us that. Using this archaic term, caste system, in today's political discourse in place in a university such as JNU is, you know, tells us the kind of political character that it has acquired. And it continues to reinvent itself. Rohit Vemula's death clearly points out to that. The people who led him to, commit suicide, who created circumstances by which he ended his life, continue to hold on to power, continue to be, continue, to remain shielded, continue to enjoy immunity from any political action. Unfortunately, I have to say that Najib is too small a fry. I mean, too small a guy whose disappearance would cause such great torrent of emotions, and because of which some kind of action will be taken against those who are involved in attacking him. He is politically too insignificant. Dalits can be, yes, because, Dalits are, although they left Hinduism, along with Ambedkar in 1956, they can be politically roped in because you can tell them that you are a very good Hindu. Politically, they can come to be seen. They are seen to be a very important category. When Una happened, the Prime Minister of this country spoke a great deal about that. But he did not, if you look at his speeches and if you go through the newspapers, after that, he did not utter a single word against the attacks on Muslims. Look at the hatred. Look at the malice. So therefore, this is, I'm looking at the manner in which Najib's case is being handled. He is almost being portrayed as the one who initiated that fight. If he had not slapped that person, it would not have happened. But even if for a moment we consider, why did he have to do that? Was he being abused by the person who confronted him, who initiated that, who confronted him? Nobody talks about that. And then the administration very conveniently, not conveniently, it is their, that is how they are being, whether this university or some other university is being told that this is how you have to function. Otherwise, it would not be, because we are, we have won with such a thumping majority that we are free to convert this country as a Hindu nation, as a Hindu Rashtra, because we have got a political mandate. So this coming back to the state of exception, we have to resurrect through our political discourse against this system, this meaningful political action. We have to strengthen, we have to go across all political parties or, student political groups in order to strengthen, in order to make this political action more meaningful, more powerful. Otherwise, this quarantine of certain section of society, singling them out, would become a permanent feature of the society. It has, in fact, it is socially to a very large extent. But enjoying the patronage of the state is very, very dangerous. Because Um, because the state, um, the word, the discourse of the state discourse of secularism, although the current political party continues to defend the doctrine of secularism, but in the private political discourse, um, they denounce secularism. Hmm? So even if you're talking against demonetization, then immediately you are also supposed to talk for Indian soldiers. Otherwise, you are not nationalist enough. So the jingoism um, that is going on, I mean, we have in a very large extent always a jingoistic society. Hmm? Probably in our personal lives we have always shared this. But now it is entering this mainstream political discourse. If you're talking against, um, you know, against one religion, so you should necessarily talk against the another. Because if you don't seek parallel, then your political discourse would not acquire any value. So that is, I think, a very, very dangerous thing in this society. Um, so we have to be nevertheless um, very hopeful about our political struggle. Um, Otherwise, the I mean, the people who have historically been abused and brutalized um, will continue to face the denigration and derogation and humiliation in the society. This lackadaisical approach on the part of this administration to quieten, um, students who are talking against, who are raising their concerns. Um, I mean, it's a sign of that. As long as we remain vocal, as long as we remain um, agitated, as long as we remain, you know, as long as we question, we keep questioning these authorities, this administration, the political discourse will have, um, you know, will have significance. Otherwise, we'll acquire the permanent state of, um, you know, um, will remain a kind of a society um, which is polarized. We have always been, I mean, if you, I'd like to go back to what happened in Una, what happened to Rohit Vemula, um, what happened to Najib, what happened in Dadri, what happened in Muzaffarnagar. Certain sections of society are and historically have been viewed as those who can be very easily done away with. So if you want to stop this, if you want to strengthen the democracy that we have, um, you know, the founding fathers fought for and preserved, so I think um, we should come out very openly against um, this lackadaisical approach of this university administration. And I think we have to go beyond this university. We have to come onto the street to to widen the scope of political struggle. Otherwise, the state of exception will, as I began, when I began this, I said, will acquire the state of permanency. Now we have to hope that you know we'll certainly continue this fight. We'll keep this fight on. If you have to preserve the principles of democracy, we have to not only preserve the principles of democracy, but we also have to make it very vibrant, so that we can go on questioning the archaic, regressive, bigoted religious values in this society. Now, with the coming of this government, religion Hinduism has acquired. I mean, on the verge of acquiring. Let me put it this way, because I'm still hopeful that that's not the. It's not going to be the character of the society. Political patronage. If that happens, then we may have to see the resurgence of caste system. And the new entrants into this caste system, along with Dalits, are Muslims. See, if you look at, and I did not tell you, you are quite smart enough to understand, the constant feature of this society, as if in order to survive itself, its staple diet has been hatred of others, humiliation of others. The first entrants, the first people have been Dalits and now Muslims. So if this society has to prolong its life, if it has to survive, it is going to feast on these two communities. And if this monster starts feasting on these two communities, then that's going to be a very dangerous thing. I mean, I may sound very overtly alarmist, but look at the extent of and the number of riots, communal as well as caste. IT sociology. So what I'm saying is I think making these statements quite responsible. I'm not even talking about the institutionalization of untouchability. Now we don't really use this word, untouchability, and our sociologists have declared, and that quite prominent sociologists, that there is no untouchability because untouchability is associated with purity and pollution. So we don't practice purity and pollution in the society, so that is gone. We may find traces of it in villages. But if you go to municipalities across the country, you go to any metropolitan city. Wilson Bezwada is here, so he's more able to speak on that. But I'll simply say this thing in my speech. 100% people involved in manual scavenging are Dalits. And there is also a small percentage of those who are historically discriminated, brutalized as criminal castes. So we have these characterizations of people who are kind of quarantined to cleanse this society. Otherwise, without them, you need people to cleanse. Look at the irony. As if you are inherently incapable of cleansing yourself. You need some other people whom you termed as impure, unclean. So we have to, we have to really, and we have to clean this society. We have to apply this purgatory method. This, what do you call? We have to hollow this out. This we have to eviscerate this society of these unclean, impure practices. And for that, we have several daunting challenges in front of us. And casteism and communalism are two most dangerous elements in this struggle and this fight. Gender is, of course, a very important issue. What happened in Sabrimala temple? What happened in Maharashtra? There is this temple called Shani temple. Women are not being allowed. There are also shrines in Bombay. Women are not being allowed in sanctum sanctorum. Now you see, there are these people, priests are very openly, clearly practicing gender discrimination. But why aren't these people being arrested for practicing discrimination? Because they enjoy the patronage not only of the state, society. The priestly caste have always enjoyed a great deal of adulation, despite having introduced the caste system in this country. They are openly practicing discrimination in front of you. Why have not these people been arrested? How else one should practice discrimination? But now we also see the regressive side of the society, that there is a group of women who argue that, we are ready to wait. To what extent we will go down? That's the question. To what extent you will stoop down in saying that we are ready to wait? Meaning you are happy, you are content, because you are being humiliated. The institutionalization of humiliation is therefore very dangerous. Nobody is inflicting humiliation on you. Of course, that has been one of the historical features of this society. But you are finding very happy in getting humiliated. That's the worst thing. When you have reconciled, I would not call it a reconciliation. This is some kind of, self-infliction, abnegation that you inflict upon yourself wound, and you are happy that, I'm very happy in getting humiliated. So this self-abnegation is a very dangerous thing. And cleansing that, purifying this society of these practices is a very, tall order. Very difficult to deal with this situation. When victims start saying that, no, everything is all right, we are quite happy in getting humiliated. We have no problem with that. How will you address this issue? What happened to Phule? What happened to Ambedkar? What happened to Periyar? Huh? These are the people who, led struggles against gender discrimination in the society. So we have to revisit these canons. We have to strengthen our political struggle, and we have to create confidence among those who need it. And that should be the feature of this society, as vibrant political discourse. Without that, we'll have no meaning. Individuals, sacrificial lambs. whether Dalits, Muslim or women. And therefore we have to, I'll finish it now, I'm about to finish. Therefore we have to strengthen our political discourse for democracy, and that to vibrant democracy. Thank you very much.